Okay, so we're going to, on this lesson, simply, again, move or copy, this time the median one, move it again to the end and create a copy. Now, once that's arrived, we're going to double click, change this to say mode, and remove the 2. Now the mode average, again another average, mode is French for most common or fashionable. That's why there's a magazine called Mode. It means fashion or most common, the one that people are more likely to wear or choose or desire. So the mode is the most common. Well, how do I identify that? Well, these lists actually are pretty useless for that. Let's prove that to ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go there, and in fact I'm going to use this one here instead, this one just there. I'm going to put equals mode. Now draw your attention to the fact that mode has this little symbol on it, and what that's telling us is that if I click on that, it's available for compatibility. This is an old function. It actually shouldn't be in the new versions, and we will be looking at the alternatives in the next 2 videos. But for now, let's keep going. So mode and all of these values. In fact, we're just going to do those ones just to have a look at them. And I press enter and I get something #n/a. Now we know the hash usually tells us that there's not enough space for this, but this is NA. NA is short for not applicable. And if I do that mode for all of these and then close it, I still get NA. So what's that about? Well, let's go to this one instead. Let's now do equals mode, and let's choose just the first ones there. Well, that came with an answer. It said 2. And if I do that mode again, but for all 11 values, surely it's going to be skewed by this thing, and I get 2 again, because mode is the most common, the most fashionable, the one that turns up the most. And the best way of seeing that is how often it appears. And it just happens that 2 appears in this list more than any other number. And the reason why this comes back with NA is because there is no mode. Each number appears once, and no number appears more commonly than any other. There is only one 10,000. If I put another 10,000 in, then that would alter the figures. Let's choose this number here. I'm now going to copy that and I'm going to paste it to there. Instantly we have a value there, and I'm going to turn that into currency. So we can now see that 29,890 appears the most common. In fact, that also becomes the median value. So that's quite nice, and is not far off the mean average of the first 10. Massively off of there. So that's really useful. Now, if I decided that I was actually going to copy this one and put it there and there, now it's changed because there's 3 of these. Now it's changed to there. However, my median shows a different value and my mean shows very different values. So averages can mean much more. They can be very different from each other and tell us much more. Yes, amongst all those numbers, this is smack in the middle. And yes, if I add them all up, this is what they're going to come to. And if they're skewed, that really... So there's a lot of information this tells me about skewed data. But that tells me that actually, in that group, most people are earning 32,655. So that's the most common. That's the average. That's the modal average. That's worth noting. It's modal average when we've got it. Okay, so let's have a look at our numbers. Now the mode does not need to be in order. It just makes that easier for us. But all I've got to do is put mode and click down that list there and close that and press enter, and it's going to take a while because it's got to go around looking for all of the instances that they come. So it's actually got to put them into order in itself and count how many of each number is there. And we've got a modal average of 946, which again is wildly different to the other. 946 happens to turn up more frequently than any other number. But if it didn't turn up as often as it did, then we would get an NA because there was no mode. So sometimes mode will come back with nothing because there is no more common. Sometimes there are more than one value. There's more than one value that turns up. So we could have had another 29890 turn up in this group. So we'd have had two modal values or a series of modal values. So mode, the old one, is useful, but it only gives us ever the one value. It would be really useful if we could decide which we were going to look at. So that's what we need to look at next. We're going to have a look next at the single mode that now appears in Microsoft Excel. That's in the next lesson. See you then. Okay, so this shouldn't be too long, but we're going to use the mode function. I'm going to right click and choose move or copy, scroll to the end, move to end, create a copy, click OK. I went through that very quickly, but you're used to that by now because you should be used to doing those functions. It's obviously taking a while to do so because there is 1 million numbers and I have a lot of sheets now building up slowly. And all I'm going to do is double click, change that to SNGL, go to the end and remove the 2. So we learned last lesson that we have this mode function. But as I explained to you, the mode function is almost redundant. It's losing ground. And that's because Excel, the new Excel, has split that into two separate functions. Let's look at the first one. Equals mode again. But you've got the one disappearing for compatibility. And then we've got SNGL and MULT. And if you can probably just see the word multiple in there. So SNGL is single. And that's the one we're going to choose. And all I'm going to do is choose the whole column and press enter. It's going to again take a while because remember what it's got to do is go through that 1,048,575 numbers, put them together individually, not necessarily organize, not order them, but group them by their numbers and then identify which one appears the most common. That's 946. What we can do is count that. So equals count if, and let's see how often that number turns up, comma, this number here. So let's just see how frequently. 1,150 times. So it appears 1,150 times. And that's it. We can't tell very much about the other numbers yet, but we can use other functions to check those later on. So we can see that Mode.SNGL is the same as mode. And when mode goes, Mode.SNGL will become the standard phrase. So it's worth learning that function rather than learning mode, because mode will most likely disappear. It's an old function because Excel only offered that before, but now we've got two different types, what we could call flavors of mode. But it's the same thing, most commonly occurring. It would still produce NA, so we've got them here, but as we know with the previous numbers of this group here, if they didn't have a replicating number, this would still produce a result saying NA, not applicable, no such number. So that's mode single. So let's now look at mode double. We're going to do that in the next video. See you then. One of the issues with the mode, it's not always the case that we have a single mode. And having the mode function as we did originally and having the mode single function as we've looked at hides the fact that there could be more than one. So let's see how we could identify those. And this is where Excel adapted. If I do equals mode.mult for multiple and select that column, then I press enter and off it goes again, analyzing, putting those into groups and trying to count how many are in each group. After a while, what it will do is come back, but it might come back with a statement. In this case, it hasn't. It recognizes there's enough space, but there are two values, two modal groups. So let's have a look at the count for each of these. Count if, and the numbers in this range equal the value here. Now the nice thing is, because I chose the whole column and I assigned that, I can then pull this down and they've got the same value. So these two numbers appear the same number of times and there's no other options around that. So what's happening in this case is the single and the original mode would have hidden the fact that actually, just because this number was the first one it came across with that number, it put that first. If it had ordered the list, or if the list had been ordered, we'd have got 166 and we could have made false decisions on this. This tells us that there are two peaks in most common, and that's really useful. If we go to here and we type in equals mode MULT and we choose the original 10, then we're going to see it just gives 2. And if I do the same thing again, mode MULT, and we know what's going to happen when I choose all the whole 11, it's going to give me 2 again because 2 only appears then. Let's just give ourselves a bit of a gap here and just put mode.MULT. For these, we already know we have 2 points. We've got 3 there and 2 there. So let's just close that off. So 3, 2, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to group those and just click on currency. So the MULT is giving me the same number I've got there. But what if I copy that and change this to the same value? Well, now it tells me I've got 2 values there. What if this value also gets copied? Now I've got 3 values. So what's happening is each time I get a modal point, this will keep showing me more and more of those modal points. That will show me the most common, and that's why it's called MULT. It's not just 2, but it will do multiple common points. So we can see how frequently those turn up, we can explore those numbers, and we get a clear idea of the multiple modal points within our data set, which is really useful. That also tells us that we do indeed only have 2 modal points in there. There's not another number that's waiting to be discovered that has the same frequency as these, frequency being how many times it turns up. So we have 3 modes. We have mean, median, and mode. In Excel, we have 2 ways of looking at the mode, the single and the multiple. And we also know that the mean average is called average. And that from a mathematical point of view, it's a bit of a misrepresentation, since actually there are 3 really decent averages that we could use just in fundamental mathematics: mode, median, and mean. But those are all the averages, and those are the ones we want to look at. So in the next lesson, we're going to be looking at everything we've done all the way back to just after we finished with battleships. That's importing of CSVs, and we're going to do that as part of a revision exercise. So see you in the next video and looking at revision exercise number 7. See you there.